TradeSquare is Australia's first business-to-business marketplace connecting people, brands and organisations into this diverse ecosystem in a unique global landscape. Through pivoting, transforming and reshaping, Australian businesses have an opportunity to create the model for the future that aligns with the world's needs and leveraging the power of a collaborative approach. Through the TradeSquare podcast, we will bring together dynamic, diverse and thought-provoking leaders from business, government and organisations to have conversations to further enable new thinking for the future. Welcome to TradeSquare, Australia's leading business-to-business marketplace. I'm Catherine Vandermeulen, and joining me on today's podcast is Kylee Stone, CEO of the Performance Code and AIPAC partner for the Design House Collective. How are you, Kylee?
I'm good, thank you.
So tell us, who is Kylee Stone?
Well, that's a great question. As a woman, I am a mother of 3 children. I live in Sydney, and I'm a business owner. I would like to acknowledge actually also my Indigenous background. So I am a descendant of the stolen generations, where my family are from a couple of different regions. One is the Kylee Nations, which is about 1,000 kilometres northwest of Brisbane. And later on, once my great-grandmother was moved from out of her community into a mission where they pretty much had moved most Indigenous people, was a place called Waka Waka. And that's where my grandmother was born. So I am the first woman actually in 4 generations to not be taken from my family. So I have a rather colourful upbringing and background. I made a very interesting jump into media, which was accidental, I call it, but landed in a role where I was working in media and storytelling, and kind of discovered that connection many, many years later after finding out, because for the most part, while I was being raised, we did not know much about, our background. It was one of those that was quite taboo. You didn't, as raised as a Westerner, you didn't get to talk much about that. So it's one of those loaded questions for me because of my identity and the difference in the background of my identity.
Very interesting. So tell us about founding the Performance Code.
Well, in 2015, I was I'd been in a senior leadership position actually at News Corp for about 6 years, and I'd had 3 kids in the space of 3 years, and realised that it was not going to be possible for me to, unless I could find a way to do it part-time, it was just going to be too much of an impact on my family. So I negotiated part-time role, but within a matter of months, I found myself incredibly frustrated because I was no longer sitting, at the executive team meetings. I had to and I'd lost all the accountability of my staff. I was in the back office really just working on strategy projects. And quite frankly, I thought to myself, I didn't climb 20 years of a corporate ladder just to end up kind of in a back office, not having an impact. So there was about a period of maybe 2 years that I went on a mission to look for, what am I going to do to turn this around for myself? How do I get to express myself as a leader, still make a difference without all the constraints that I found myself in the traditional, corporate model. So organically, I ended up running a mentoring program for a group of women who were challenged with the same things. That went for about 6 months, and then I just started, more and more people were asking me for mentoring because what was I doing in order to, get through these challenges, and just realised that actually it was a big gap. And so in 2015, I had the courage to leave, despite at the time, having kids and needing pretty much a good wage. I decided that it was more important for me to actually do the work that I was inspired to do. And so I started coaching, and then that's when I left and started the Performance Code. And really it was organic at that point.
We love an organic story. So you also lead as a partner for AIPAC for the Design House Collective. Can you share more about this?
Yeah, so I've been leading resilience and leadership programs in coaching. And at the beginning of COVID last year, obviously there was a big challenge, and I was running these workshops for executives there, and then COVID happened, and it was one of the industries that got, decimated was the coaching and development inside of corporate organisations. All the budgets just got wiped out. I got a phone call from Qantas saying, we've just had to lay off 20,000 staff. We're going to have to put all the work on hold. So at that point, I came back and, did what I normally do as a strategist, took a look at what was I going to do in the business. Was I just going to wait it out and rebuild? But at that point, I realized that actually my passion was not specifically working on leadership development, was working with leaders in building brands and being able to apply the same kind of approach, almost like how do you impact performance whilst taking care of our well-being. And one of the interesting things I discovered was that a clear vision and purpose is one of the foundations on developing resilience. And so the long story short of it, I made a transition and went, right, well, my commitment is to not work on leadership development. I'd rather work with leaders on building brands and utilizing all those skills around purpose and vision and values to get people aligned. And it was during that time I actually happened to be making that decision with a colleague who was in Vancouver, and she was she runs Design House Collective, and we were doing the same work. She just happened to be already doing it, working with entrepreneurs and founders on building brands, and I was doing it with executives. And so we kind of made the decision that we would, go into a partnership, and I'd lead the AIPAC region and doing that work, and that would be my transition out of purely working in leadership development. So when it comes to big scale projects, predominantly working with, business owners and founders, that they're really great, in terms of their technical expertise and their passion for building a business. But for the most part, often they don't have all of the, the high level strategic planning, the high level strategic CMO type activities and the design of that. So that partnership for me gives me additional resources, so I don't just go in and do the work by myself. I've got this whole pool of talent from around the world, in design thinking, organizational transformation, business engineering. And so we literally come in as partners for people who are running organizations to just provide what's necessary in order to scale.
And so with these businesses, how have they changed over the last 18 months to really create further impact? Because obviously there's been lots of transformation and lots of change going on.
Yeah, look, I think what we're certainly seeing, even in a corporate, very different from a corporate point of view to independent business owners, is a lot more collaboration. And I think that, I certainly noticed that for myself when I went through that transition at Qantas at the time. A lot of people are kind of saying, I've got to just do things very differently these days. What we're doing is not working, and we've got to discover a new way of going about things. So I think there's been a big shift to outsourcing, a lot of companies pivoting, even restructures and changing strategies. They're discovering that despite making all those changes, they're not seeing the results. So one of the things that we're certainly doing is kind of employing more of the skills that you'd see in traditional marketing roles or HR roles, and embedding it right across the business, so that people as individuals feel like they've got the talent and the expertise to kind of impact the results of the business.
And so thinking about over this time, how have resilient, dynamic and resourceful individuals played a key role in working towards transforming the business sphere as a whole through these times of change?
Well, I have to say this is a tough one because resilience in a period like this is very challenging. There's a lot of stress on people, and it makes it very difficult, to keep doing things the way they were, and especially as resources are very tight. So one of the things that I've noticed that differentiates those who are excelling is quite serendipitously slowing down. When we actually stop and take things out of existence, focus more on an individual's well-being rather than ramping up. Because I think traditionally what tends to happen is people just think they've got to do more, but that doing more just causes more burnout. So it's been the reverse. So what's happening is people are going, actually, no, we need to deal with, the issues of mental health, especially, the focus on well-being, and then realizing that focus on well-being is actually having a direct impact on performance, surprisingly. So they're the ones that are actually getting the benefit.
And so what's a key message that you are super passionate about that you are championing through your work?
Number one is collaboration. That would be the key. We tend to think that we have to be responsible, whether we're as a business owner or inside a bigger company, that we've got, we get titles, you get in a job and, you might be a director of something or as a business owner, you're accountable for the whole business. But the problem with that is that people then think they have to take care of everything themselves. And so there's a lack of collaboration or teamwork that goes across the business. Now, there's a few different ways that I've heard this spoken about. Shared leadership is one. People are kind of adopting more of a spread of accountability across the business. Business owners are actually realizing that they've got to outsource to try to get the right skills in, or at least partner up with other businesses. So there's a lot more strategic partnerships going on in the business world than I've ever seen before. And I do think the key to that is, and this is not easy also, like I've been working with a couple of organizations actually where I've got partnership models, and collaborating is a very difficult thing because as human beings, we tend to be very good at operating independently. And when it comes to operating in teams, it's just a whole new level. So that's a big thing that I'm kind of pushing for at the moment.
I'd love to further unpack the art of storytelling and how that is really used in business and how we can use that in businesses to create more meaningful connections.
Well, it's a direct link for me to the ability to be able to work as a team. And storytelling in business is generally about, and this is one of the things that's kind of not happening as well as I think we could. So storytelling, if you look in the traditional sense, you could say, in fact, it was actually about businesses telling their story to their ideal customers. And if you told the story of the business, then you'd get more customers, and traditionally we'd call that marketing. But today, what we're seeing is that, in fact, those stories often tend to talk more about the business and what the business is good at. But people don't want to hear that. What they're actually interested in hearing about is what's going to make a difference for them in their lives. So today, storytelling, those who do it really well talk more about the stories of their customer. So it's the story of the purpose and the vision of the company and the brand, which fundamentally is like, well, what is the problem you are solving for me? And how does that make a difference to me in my life? And so when you see that play out, for example, on a company's website or in their marketing materials, if it's done well, you will not read anything about the business. All you will read about is the customer and their journey and their benefits and what they get from actually being engaged with that company. So that's perhaps the most powerful part, is when you get the story of your business right so that it is talking about your consumer, and you enable all the staff in your company to align on that story, you get a very powerful connection to results and engagement, as well as engagement with employees. So that's the main part. Of course, the other part is the ability to connect and collaborate internally. And if you're going to do that, not only do you need to be clear about the business story, but an individual's personal story also contributes. And this for me is the one that resonates with kind of my background and my Indigenous culture. Indigenous First Nations people are obviously, been storytellers for years. And we know that sharing personal stories is the way to create a personal connection. And connections as an individual is what creates collaboration. And when you get collaboration and teamwork in an environment or a company, you get better results.
And so over the years, you have won many awards and accolades. Which are you most proud of and why?
Oh, great question. I can't say one for sure. I think because accolades for me are really about just a validation of, is what I'm doing the right thing? Is what I'm doing on track with my intention? I got an award once for, as part of NAIDOC, actually, as an Indigenous woman in business. And for me, that was an indication for me that I'm on track with my cultural alignment and making a difference. And then last year I got LinkedIn's top 20 voices. And again, that just was a validation for me that what I was doing was on point with what I was talking about at leadership development. So they've all been, I'm proud of every single one of them. And for me, it really is just a test to make sure I'm doing the right thing.
Awesome. And so where will your focus on impact be over the next 12 months?
Sticking true to purpose is a big one for me. Out of everything that we're seeing around performance and being able to specifically impact people's well-being. I mean, running a business is hard work, and a lot of business owners are exhausted. But that one thing, I think, if we look at everything that makes a difference, is to make sure that at the end of the day we stop and actually take a look for ourselves and see whether or not what we're doing is actually making a difference. Is this how I want to live the rest of my life? Do I want to keep operating like this and not be able to spend time with my family? Is this level of exhaustion doing me any good? And I mean, we're in a state where, and this is not just pandemic, this is pre-pandemic, 85% of people are unhappy in their work. Mental health issues are the highest they've been, in 13 years. We've got autoimmune conditions, which are stress-related diseases that are just, accelerating. So for me, it has to be about what are we doing as an individual to stop, to reflect on our purpose, and then see how we can use our purpose in the way we work to make sure that what we are doing actually makes a difference and that we don't live our life inside of regret.
And so this year, TradeSquare has been connecting to women who choose to challenge in their roles. How do you choose to challenge?
Saying no.
What have you said no to lately?
A lot, actually. I'm actually, great question, because at the moment I am running a mastermind for women in leadership and business, and we've got 15 women in the group, and we've been going now for the last, I think it's 7 weeks. And one of the things that was common for every single woman is they're really great at saying yes. They're really great at volunteering and offering help, and yet they're not great at asking for help. So they don't stop to identify, what could I ask somebody else to help me with? So actually being able to stop offering everybody else help, or stop saying yes to helping others, and start saying yes to actually what have I got to take out of existence so that I can focus on doing what's going to make the biggest difference for me.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your world and your wisdom with TradeSquare.
Thanks.
For more information on TradeSquare, head to www.tradesquare.com.au and support Australian business economic recovery and growth with a collaborative approach to the future of business.